Well, today in the studio, I'm joined by Alan Branagh, who is the founder of the Alchemist Forum. Alan, you're very welcome to the podcast studio.
Lovely.
How are you today?
Lovely to be here. Thank you.
Now, before we begin, a little bit of background then on Alan and his business. So the Alchemist Forum, Alan, is this right, is a unique membership organisation known as your personal board of trusted business owners, of CEOs and leaders. It transforms how CEOs, business owners and leaders tackle challenges and seize opportunities. As a community of equals, they foster collaboration, they inspire innovation and unlock greater performance in individuals, teams and organisations. And through this shared wisdom, purpose-driven leadership, strategic thinking and greater decision-making, they empower leaders to build enduring businesses and achieve greater performance and transformative growth in a rapidly evolving world. Wow. So Alan is also a member of the Paddle NI board and Clean Water Sports Alliance NI in UK and the co-centre for climate and biodiversity and water. So Alan, lots there in the intro, but we're here to talk primarily today about the Alchemists Forum. Tell us a little bit about you and what led you to begin this forum.
I've had a long history in business. I left Northern Ireland probably in the early 80s and worked for global corporates and was involved in a lot of change programs, particularly implementing IT systems, and really got fascinated by the people side of change rather than the technology. Technology was often very, very easy, but it was the people change, the stepping into the new world, the resistance, the resilience and around that. That really got me very interested in people more than anything. And that started my journey, and started my own business in London back in 2000, having come out of an internet startup that bombed. We burnt 100 million and crashed and burned.
Wow. First
digital currency in the world. So that was fast moving, almost too fast.
Okay.
And that gave me the idea of really coaching and working with CEOs in terms of that fast-paced technology sector in terms of change, and that's where I started my business and then moved back here to Northern Ireland in 2005.
And you are passionate about executive coaching, and you've coached some people from some of the big names out there, haven't you? What is it that you bring to them?
It's the integration of both sports psychology and business psychology. I was very fortunate in my career to spend time with people like Sir John Whitmore, who wrote Coaching for Performance.
Oh gosh, you actually spent time with him?
Yeah, a lot of time with him.
Wow.
And Timothy Galway, who wrote The Inner Game, who John, in fact, I had my epiphany is probably the best way to put it with John Whitmore. So I was on a course which was to do with NLP. For me, being a techie geek, it was about how do you program people, or how do you work out what programs are running on people.
Neuro-linguistic programming.
Yes. And we had a weekend called High Performance Coaching with John Whitmore and David Hemry, who was the Olympic gold winner, medal winner for over the 400 hurdles. And I watched him coach with no input whatsoever. It was all output from the person in front of him. It was non-judgmental, non-directional, and I just went, wow, this is the way to engage people and engage change, because you own it, not me.
That is so fascinating to me, and only a couple of years ago I got my ILM level 5 coaching and mentoring qualification, and I was super proud of that. So Sir John Whitmore was obviously the textbook that we went to, and I can't believe that that's where you had your epiphany. And it is that about how do we program people. Even the way we've mentioned that, why should we always want to program people? Why can't people think for themselves?
And that was the difference of using the coaching model, was you release and unlock people rather than input. And that was the epiphany, and took it back in the way I managed and led my team. So I ran the data center for Europe and Eastern Africa at that stage, 24/7, 365 days a year. A lot of change going on, moving from mainframes to PCs, and there were people that got it and were ready for the new world and wanted to learn more, and there were those that were going, well, actually, you've just taken my world away from me. I really don't want to go there. I'm a mainframe operator. I want to remain that way. And it was that curiosity around people and what engages people in change, and quite happy for it. And I was often in many different countries, and you'd see exactly the same thing, irrespective of culture or...
Is that right?
Absolutely.
This was just across the world.
Yeah, and a lot of it comes from fear or confidence, not confident about using. So we spend a lot of time working with people on their confidence in using the system. And once that confidence was gained, off they went. So I end up working with CEOs and business around the most fragile thing in the world, I think, is confidence.
Yeah.
And you would think they're hugely confident, and they are, but sometimes around decision-making, there's confusion, there's not sure if we do this, what happens, and hence why the Alchemist Forum is here. It's about decision-making and making greater decisions, but not by input into them and telling them what to do. It's by them coming to that conclusion and unlocking it themselves.
Do you find that hard as a coach sometimes, especially when you think, oh, I know what the answer is. I know what you should be doing here, but I can't tell. I have to allow this to come out organically.
However, John once said to me, he says, look, if you're sitting in an office and it's on fire, don't be sitting around thinking, should we debate this?
Oh, right, okay.
Time to get
Jump
out.
in.
So there are occasions when maybe that is helpful.
An intervention is required.
As an option, not as the solution. So adding other options, and you probably know for your process, you can on occasions offer options, but it's only an option, it's not a solution. Mm-hmm. The solution has to be owned by the person. So that ownership, responsibility and accountability is really what we work with in terms of CEOs and business owners. Is they have to go away, they own it, they're responsible for it, and they're held accountable. But they're held accountable by their peers, which is a shift as well. You may work with a senior team, but they won't hold you as accountable as someone you don't pay. That makes sense.
So accountability is absolutely key. And I suppose it's identifying that we're not all the same as well. How important is that? The old personality profiling or the insights or the strengths that you see these individuals, and not everybody wants to jump at the same time or at the same pace. And some people need a little more time.
And that can be quite frustrating. If you're leading change in an organisation, you can see the future. You're absolutely clear about where and the value of going in that direction, and bringing people with you who don't necessarily have that vision yet, don't understand where we're going. That's often the biggest frustrations and challenges. You know, it's sort of, why do they not understand?
Yes. Why don't they just do it?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Why can't they just do it? JFDI. And you're going, well, actually, it's how you bring people with you, as many of them as possible. Not everyone's going to go there.
Okay, so talk to me about the Alchemists Forum. When did you start it up and how does it work?
So I've been running confidential peer groups for over 20 years, originally under a franchise called the Academy of Chief Executives. And that was a franchise that came to an end just over 10 years ago. And then did 10 years of sell side of businesses, so selling businesses. And through that journey, I discovered that so many organizations or companies or lifestyle businesses are not ready for exit. And of course, the question always is, you're going to exit at some stage, either vertically or horizontally. So let's go for the vertical version.
Gosh, right.
But there were so many organizations who would come to me and say, look, things have changed for me. I'm ready to step away from the business. Either my kids don't want it, or I've got shareholder challenges, or I've just had enough of it. I want to go and do something else. And hadn't put the structures and the infrastructures and the people in place to allow them to step away. So when you've interviewed maybe 2,000 companies and you find that 90% of them aren't ready, that's what led me to build the Alchemist Forum. It's that 5-year journey almost, that the mindset shift from I no longer want to run a lifestyle business. I really want to have a business that grows the people within it and allows me to step away at an appropriate time, bring the right talent in. That's the sort of conversations we would have in the room, and that's the journey that many of the CEOs and business owners come in. Very much real time.
Tell me about these CEOs and, what's the criteria?
You want to lead the change yourself. I think that's a key difference.
And the size of the business?
Anywhere between 1 million and 50, 100 million. We have organizations of that size. So that diversity brings opportunities into the room. So you've got very traditional businesses but also young upstarts, I guess is probably the way. But they all learn from each other, and they all have different perspectives, and it's those different perspectives coming into the room that really adds the richness and the value.
So you pay a membership?
Membership fee, absolutely.
Okay.
To be in the room. So the membership is to be in the room. So everyone's an equal. Everyone pays exactly the same to be in the room. So that's where the together as equals comes from.
And how many members do you have now?
Typically, we keep it between 10 and 13.
Oh, I see. So it's
it's very intimate.
Yeah. Right.
Over that, there isn't airtime for conversations and depth of conversation, and really get into the nitty gritty of some of the opportunities and maybe challenges that they face. So it could be acquiring a business, it could be exiting a business, it could be taking on finance, it could be stepping away from it, it could be people change, it could be not necessarily this isn't the right team to take it to the next level. What got us here doesn't get us there. Those types of conversations are what we do, and it's real time. So,
and does that group evolve then, or I mean, do you start at the start of the year and you're in for 12 months until the end of the year, or what's the time frame?
People usually stay. It's 5 years. This 5-year journey. 5 years. That mission of change to be ready. Some are shorter than others. So previous members maybe would have been in for 3 years. So it really depends when they've achieved their outcome is really where we're working. So if someone comes and buys your business in less than 5 years, or you go and do something else, or you grow into such a size that you do something else. So we find 5 years is, we've been doing it 20 years and seem to be 5-year cycles. And those are typically the horizons that we focus on. Do
you meet face-to-face or virtually?
Face-to-face.
Okay.
Very different than virtual.
Yeah, it absolutely is. I'm definitely a face-to-face person myself.
Yeah, absolutely. Brings different energy in the room, and just that personal interaction. And again, if you listen to CEOs, particularly coming through COVID and coming out the back of COVID, there was a realization that they were trying to do business deals, they were trying to work with people, and they couldn't meet them. They couldn't do that final handshake or that get a real sense of that person. And that resonated the whole way through COVID and coming out the back end. And by offering that in the room is really discovered for that level of business owner and that level of leadership. That final check in the room, hugely important. Obviously, I've seen deals done virtually, but I'm not sure myself. But there you go.
How often do you meet?
Every month.
Once a month. Okay. So if I was to sign up, say, next.
You're most welcome.
Well, oh my God, I was going to say that I was being a bit presumptuous. But if I was a new member and I came into the group, what happens?
We meet on a Tuesday, first Tuesday of every month. We currently use the Bullet Hotel. It's quiet, it's out of the way. And basically come in and we ask what your outcomes for today. What do you really want to focus on? What do you need to drive? If you've been there the previous month, they will be held accountable for things they said they were going to go away and do.
Right.
Create dialogue in the room, create comfort. Even when new people come into the room, settle in very, very quickly. There's an openness and a curiosity and a desire of the other members to understand more about you and your business. And I think they study businesses in a way. To see if there's bits I can add and change and add to mine, and there's bits of the way you do something that would make a difference to me, and maybe I can offer you something. And often in the process of the day, I often hear that helping someone solve their problem has actually solved something I didn't realise I had. But actually, and you can see the brain going and the
light bulbs.
Absolutely. God, if I did that, and or the confidence around. Conversation recently was around employee ownership programs.
Do you know, that was my next question. We've just completed a series in this very studio on employee ownership trusts. Yeah. And, you know, that whole question of what happens to my business that I've built, who do I sell it to? What about if my employees took it on?
But even that ownership in terms of exit has certain challenges and complications. Of course. But also advantages depending on who the acquirer is. They may or may not see that as positive. So that journey of whether it adds value, but then others would say, well, look, the level of engagement that we get from our employees by being owners as well. But then you also, as a leader who probably led everything autocratically.
That's it.
I've now got to engage more people. I've got to get involved, and I've got to be more of a coach than I necessarily was before. So there's
the accountability piece. I have to answer to the board, and
which under the Companies Act and all those sorts of things should be doing anyway.
Yes. Are you in favour? Are you a fan?
Absolutely, involving as many people as. Again, it's that creativity. That's new ideas. It's being open to those new ideas, and people want to be involved in the decision making in an organisation. I was fascinated by the transition of Harley-Davidson many years back to the 70s and 80s. And I read a book called More Than a Motorcycle. And Rich Teerlink, who led that change, was constantly realising that the people who were involved in the change changed. Those that weren't. And it's a big thing. You say I play with Lego.
Yes, we do have the cameras on, but if people are listening today, they won't realise that you've brought the toys in.
Lego would be very similar. You know, its change in the late 90s and 2000 when they were losing, $2 billion a year, was very much about engaging their organisation in the solutions, not bringing external consultants in, not working with external, but actually using the people that worked in the business and giving them mechanisms and processes to have the conversations and bring their knowledge and wisdom to the table, that it was seen as being valuable. And hence the Lego I play with, and storytelling and the visualization and the dialogue and conversation that evolves around that. So
I've seen you deliver workshops at conferences, and you get people playing with the Lego, using the Lego, building with the Lego, working as a team with the Lego.
Yeah.
A lot of lessons from Lego then. Huge.
And so a lot of my study was around sports psychology and sport, but the game I chose was business, not sport. And this sounds weird, but actually, how can you apply the learnings that you get in a very focused area, which is sport, where people are, they're driven to play rugby, they're driven to play for Ireland or whoever. We don't necessarily have always those drives within business, but how do you engage them? How do you bring them into the conversation? So working within the game of business is the area that I like to focus on.
What are the biggest challenges that you're seeing amongst members at the minute? You've talked about, obviously, the big one, which is the exit strategy and what happens next. But day to day, people are bringing challenges. Presumably, I want to talk about this today. Do they bring that problem to the group?
Certainly do. Talent, finding the right talent, getting them to work together. 2024 was a challenging year for everybody, certainly financially. Not everybody, but there's a lot of challenge out there, and certainly there seems to be a level of doom and gloom going forward into 25. Some of the changes around national insurance and those are how do we take on those extra costs without losing people is one of the biggest challenges. Where do we get growth from? And particularly Northern Ireland, we work with obviously all Northern Ireland companies. It's looking at those opportunities then beyond Northern Ireland, beyond the shores, going south, going into GB and even into Europe. And that sort of circles all the way back to the selling of businesses. I'm not saying Northern Ireland isn't attractive, but when people come to look at companies in Northern Ireland, where's the growth opportunity for them? And we're a very small country. We're only 1.8 million people.
And that's where all the focus is, isn't it?
Absolutely.
On scaling, growing. And maybe it's not the right time to do that, or do you think it's always the right time?
We build small giants. It's about focusing on being greater rather than bigger.
Okay.
So how can you be great? Is there an area you can be the best at? So if you read Jim Collins' work, and I was fortunate again to spend time online with Jim Collins, that transition from good to great. And again, you find that from the acquisition side. If you've got a good business and I'm interested in buying, it's an opportunity for me. If it's a great business, it's strategic for me. I will pay more for a great business than I will for a good business.
Interesting.
If you want to maximise your outcome, then focusing on being great has dividends at the back end. And I guess again, that's an observation for me on the sell side of businesses and sitting with businesses when acquirers and getting inside their head. Why have they turned up at the table? Why are they interested in you? Why are they interested in your business? I want to buy your business, but I don't want to buy you. Which is quite interesting because...
And for many of these people, that's their baby, that's their life.
Absolutely.
And are you going to come in and wreck it?
but they don't necessarily transition well into an organisation
No.
of a bigger size because they're entrepreneurial, they've grown their own business.
And they don't want somebody else telling them
Tell
what
them
to
what
do.
to do. So that's the change.
It's usually
in mindset
temporary,
change.
isn't it? And
yeah.
then,
Yeah, 3 to 6 months is usually the sort of thing.
wow, that's pretty good.
At the other
That's
end. So
yes.
Others do stay beyond, and they get real opportunities when there's an organisation. We have sold businesses like that where they've continued to grow within the new organisation. They've found their niche and found that entrepreneurial spirit within that organisation.
So it's really interesting talking to you with the two different hats. So we've had a general chat about business and what businesses can do and how the Alchemist Forum can help them. But what about running your own business then? Can you coach yourself through these challenges? Or are you finding it's useful for you? And what kind of challenges are you facing as a business?
I guess I can coach myself, but however, I am part of a peer group myself. So different countries. So we have a chairs peer group. They run independent peer groups. And that keeps me growing my business and looking for new opportunities. I think as I move forward, looking beyond the shores of Northern Ireland is probably the next stage for me. It's one of those businesses I can take. Again, I'm not going to be hiring loads of people. That's not my goal. My goal is to be great at what we do and have people attracted to that.
And yet the business is you. So how do you do that? I mean, you'd have to clone yourself.
Absolutely. And I'm reverse of what we often coach people through. But that's my choice. And
yes.
This is the way I want to drive it.
So where have you got your sights set?
GB, London and Manchester are the next two opportunities for me to grow the organisation the way it is, to build peer groups and then have those peer groups connect together. We have that opportunity with other independents. We've done that in the past where we'll fly over to meet them or they'll come to meet us. So you'll have similar type people in different parts of the world or country interacting. And that's the next stage up for us.
Wow. So exciting plans ahead. Yeah. And then would you organise events and things like that? Would you bring speakers? Would it get bigger?
We bring speakers every quarter, interestingly. So we have access to about 200 speakers. And they'll often be bringing new topics, new ideas. But even some of the old topics. Our last speaker that we had was a gambler, ex-gambler, who set up the James Bond experience in Casino Royale, but he was teaching risk and managing risk and what's your personal risk profile. And
well, there's a lot of parallels there.
Absolutely. So Casper Berry was his name, and he's just phenomenal. But he uses that as a platform to help you understand your level of risk and how you do things.
What's your level of risk, would you say, Alan?
I thought it was higher than it turned out to be.
Right. Yeah. I'm quite risk averse.
But it was the calculations. And for him, it was all about statistics and the turning of a card. And he had the statistics worked out. And he goes, so what's the value? Will you hold on if you know how many the statistics of this turning up against this?
So the probability, he had it all worked out.
Yeah.
Right.
There's a defined science around this, believe it or not.
Oh, right. It makes me nervous and anxious even thinking
He uses
about
Texas Hold'em as the mechanism of teaching it. So it's quite.
But even that knowing when is the time to sell. What if things are going really great? If it just keep going for a bit longer?
Yeah. And when we played, we actually set up a Casino Royale experience. And the person that won was probably the person that didn't know how to play cards the most. And I thought that was the most fascinating thing. Those that were skilled at playing poker didn't necessarily win in the end. And there is an element of blind luck in all of this.
Right. So you don't need to be a poker player if you're going to be a CEO then.
Yeah.
Maybe you should brush up on the card skills as well. Goodness, so you have you've got aspirations yourself. You learn a lot about yourself and others. I mean, people, that's what really makes you tick.
Yeah, it's unlocking people. I think that's the thing I got from Joe Whitmore and Timothy Galway. Even Jim Collins, if you listen to his work, it's how you unlock people.
And obviously confidentiality and all of that, but what transformations have you seen when you get a certain type coming into the room and they think, oh, I know everything, or, oh, maybe I don't know anything. What do you see after people complete the 5 years?
Typically, they either sell the business or move on and grow other business. So we would have, so success would be one of our members running a successful business realizes that he actually wants to engage more people in employment. He likes employing people. So there's a term coming out of the States called conscious capitalism. So it's how you use your money. And his drive is very much to grow the employment level, certainly on the North Coast, which is where he's from. And he's opened 2 other businesses since then. So using his existing business to then, it's a bit like the Grant Studios we're in at the minute. That's an entrepreneur who's gone beyond just his core business.
That's it.
How does he create things beyond? And those are the successes we see. And I find those more exciting and interesting.
And we hear how important ESG is and, people, place, planet, all of those things. Whenever you are looking at somebody wanting to invest or acquire, are they really their priorities? Do you find that you get a lot of people with those conscious? Becoming
more and more. Greenwashing is something that people are very concerned about.
Yeah.
What is your carbon footprint? And I think over the next 5 years, that's going to become even more to the fore. That not just in terms of how you run your organization, in terms of what your carbon footprint is, but maybe investing in nature-based solutions and finding ways to recover. We only have one Earth.
Mm-hmm.
At the end of the day, it's not going to go away. 3% of it is drinking water. But only 3%. And look what we do with 3%. And I find that's why I've been so interested in getting involved in the resolution of Loch Ness and things like that.
Yes, that's the other interest for you. The environment's massive. Yeah.
So I'm a stand-up paddler, but we're doing that for 20 years. I've been a surfer for 40-odd. The water environment is something I've spent a lot of time in.
What do you think about what's happening in Loch Ness?
It's shocking, really.
Yeah. And that it's been allowed to happen, and we've known about it for so long. I think that's it.
Yeah, but we haven't invested.
No.
And I was at a conference in England, and exactly the same there. It's no different around the world. And Northern Ireland's slightly different in that where water is free in Northern Ireland.
Yes, so do we need to charge for? Yeah. We do.
But I think people getting ill from it, dogs dying, otters dying, that's in the last 2 years, that tipping point, we've reached that tipping point.
Yeah, really bad things are happening, and gosh, all around the world. But it's on our doorstep now, and it's the beating heart really of Northern Ireland too. And this algal bloom is causing.
But it happens elsewhere in the world. It's not unusual for Northern Ireland.
There are solutions out there. There are
solutions out there that have been implemented successfully.
Just going to take time.
Yeah.
And money.
Money. And that's something our government doesn't necessarily have at the minute. So, but the pressure's huge, and certainly with the Clean Water Sports Alliance, we're finding Olympians can't practice,
that's right.
Get ready. We have the same with the paddle NI. So where can you go? I get asked. I run an online community for stand-up paddleboarding, and we regularly get questions. So, like, where can I go? Where can I paddle? And that environment is, I guess, coming out of COVID, we used the environment a lot more than we've ever used it.
And we saw nature thriving as well, which was beautiful to witness, and the mental health benefits and getting outdoors and getting outside. You've talked about a number of different companies that you admire, and your Lego and your Harley Davidson, but what about leaders? Who's doing it well?
Gosh, who's doing it well? Not Elon Musk or people like that.
Yeah, well,
not Trump.
Yeah, the world is full of leaders at the minute.
I think we could
very aggressive.
You can list the ones that are not doing it well, probably easier than the ones that you can. I think some of the members in our group are doing it well. They're quietly doing it. It's the ones who are humble and quietly doing it. You don't notice them. They're doing it in their own way. Often aren't getting awards for change. They sit quietly in behind. I think Jim Collins called it a level 5 leader. It's that humbleness. When you get to that point, it's not about you. It's about the rest of the organisation. So, yeah, I probably would. I think that's the difficulty. They're quiet and
the really good ones are behind the scenes.
Absolutely.
And they let their people shine, or their product.
Absolutely.
And all of these things.
They're the ones that touch the customer most.
And you talked in the introduction about the work that you've done or you did around digital transformation. My goodness, we're still in the middle of all of that, and fears around AI and embracing it or not, and jobs being obsolete. Is that a concern for people at the minute, and how do you think we're handling that in business in Northern Ireland?
Concern of how to integrate it, how do people change. It will affect some people. It enhances others. I'm dyslexic, so I love it. It helps me significantly in my writing and however other people are doing other things with it. I think it's more the announcements from Facebook, etc., that come the last couple of days. I think those are the areas we got to worry about when it comes to AI and the false messages that are going out there, and people using their wisdom, personal wisdom, to say, well, actually, does this make sense?
Trust your gut. Let me talk to you a little bit about your dyslexia, if you don't mind, because I did pick up on that on the website. It was you wanted to let people see this and leverage the power of dyslexic thinking. Love that. What's dyslexic thinking, and how can it help?
I guess we just see the world in a different way, and the journey with John Whitmore and learning, and I guess I left school branded as stupid is probably the best way to put it.
What age were you when you left school?
So I was 18, so I didn't go on to university. Exams were, looking back now, I realised the effort to consume the information in the way it's delivered through written, it takes 10 times more effort for me and dyslexics than it does for many other people. So I became fascinated through the journey, and that's why the NLP was other ways of taking input. So there's visual, there's auditory, there's kinesthetic, so hence the Lego. And I can use all of your brain. And that was my fascination, and still is to this day. So everything I do is about whole brain thinking. It's using mechanisms and processes and conversations and storytelling and all of those things that engages your whole brain. So irrespective of which way it works. So if your primary input is visual, then Lego and things like that will be visualization. I find as a dyslexic, the connection between written word and creating the movies in your head doesn't work that way. It works a different way. Whereas if I hear it, so audiobooks, I'm in heaven. I can see everything that way.
Yeah.
And then the touching and the feeling, the experiential learning, everything we do is experiential. From that experience, then you can go away and do things. So hopefully, and it's designed to hit all three.
Yeah. So. And the world's ready to hear those messages too. You talked about the challenges with recruiting talent. Yeah. We've got to be much more inclusive now. And in the past, maybe people like you didn't get the opportunities because the recruitment process excluded them.
So the other statistic is that 60% of entrepreneurs are dyslexic. 60%? 60%.
That is fascinating. I've never
and self-made millionaires. You
Yes.
create coping mechanisms, you find over time. And so if you're struggling with reading and writing in the traditional sense, it doesn't make you stupid. Your coping mechanisms, so someone's not necessarily going to hire you. Northern Ireland's particularly around this because it likes to have degrees when you're applying for them. So if you haven't done that, what do? You have to start your own business. And that entrepreneurial spirit often comes from that coping mechanism, that finding other ways, finding other routes. So we're really good at finding other ways of doing things. And again, in the room, I guess that I run, I would say a higher propensity. Doesn't mean they're being diagnosed, but certainly they would be driven by that. You find a lot of high-performance sports people are driven by other things. Dyslexia, ADHD are all part of that process, are part of the way their brains work and the way they think, and gives them that drive and determination. And that's the other thing about the Alchemist Forum name comes from a book written by Sir Charles Handy, who was he's an Irish management guru, and he analysed the Joe Malones of this world, the Richard Bransons. What was it about them? Dyslexia was key.
Is that right?
Determination and drive were the other two key things, and that coping and finding ways around. The famous one is obviously Jo Malone, and her, because she couldn't read the side of the bottles, enhanced her smell. So when her mother asked her to pass her a bottle with the perfume in it, or the mixture, she would smell it and pass it on rather than necessarily be able to, or whatever she saw.
Yeah.
In my case, it's words jump around, but that's all right. I don't mind.
Well, there you go. I've learned so much today, and it is fascinating. And again, I was only having a conversation with someone yesterday about so many people identifying now or wanting to go and see if they maybe have ADHD or are on the spectrum, to the point now that I think ADHD medication, there's like a 5-year waiting list.
So I don't know enough about.
No, I don't know. That was just my conversation in the hairdresser, so that is not gospel. But
I'm not one for.
It's fascinating.
Drugging,
right?
Or and there's some great work being done around this and the chatter in your head. So I spent time with Professor Stephen Peters, so the chimp paradox. So
yes.
A lot of this is the way your brain works. It's understanding the way your brain works.
So talk to us a little bit about the chimp paradox again. So
that message that's going on in your head, the chimp is always on, according to Stephen Peters, and it's how that it's there to keep you safe.
Yes, it's the guard dog kind of thing.
But it's engaging what he calls the human that sits in behind it. So rationalizing, slowing down, thinking actually, almost talking to yourself, saying, well, that doesn't make sense actually here. Which goes back to the inner game of Timothy Galway, which from the sports side is getting that chatter out of the way so you can get to what is known as being in flow, being in the zone.
Yes, I'm hearing a lot about flow as well at the minute. Yeah. So that is just the ideal state to be performing in, is that right? How do you reach?
It only happens in the moment, which is one of the most fascinating things. Pete Carroll, I was spent time with him online. I was listening to him and he says, high performance only happens in the moment. You have to practice. Everything you do in behind gets you to that point. But it actually only happens in the moment, and almost you don't know when it's going to happen. One of the reasons for using Lego is you can recreate that state of being in flow, being in zone. I can watch them. Now I don't know what it is. But if you ask a high performance athlete, have they ever been in the zone, and their eyes light up and they say, oh yes, I remember when.
Yes, that moment.
And it's active, but yet it's relaxed. Their brain is thinking everything through. The way their body works, everything is just happening almost effortlessly.
I've immediately gone to listening to an interview with Hannah Scott, the gold medalist, the Olympic GB rowing team, talking about that, all of that energy and work that they put into being there on that day. And then, the Dutch team, I think it was, were slightly ahead of them, but they knew if they just kept going, and it was just that steady. It was beautiful, and that was the flow. And then they
so my fascination in the business in the game of business is how do you do that with individuals? How do you do that with teams, but in a business scenario rather than in a sports scenario where they can come together. And that's part of, I have 4 pillars that I set up in terms of the Alchemist Forum. One is active time out. So time to sit back and practice. So Hannah Scott's not going to turn up to the Olympics not having done a lot of practice. You find in business that most people don't practice. We turn up, make decisions.
Time out of the business.
Absolutely.
To work
on themselves. But also even chat about things they're going. So practice what you're going to go and do. Practice your decision making.
What, role playing?
Absolutely, do all that as well. Build it in Lego. Practice, and then turn up. So my observation over the 40 odd years in business is we would make decisions to go in this direction, and suddenly you're committed. You've no idea whether it's going to work or not. You haven't taken.
Why would you do that when you think about it?
But that's the way business is set up.
So that's pillar number 1, active time out.
A focus on high performance. So what is high performance? Just even answering the question. Everyone has a different definition for them, which is fine. So what's your definition of high performance over mine? I know it only happens in the moment. I'll do everything to get you to the moment where that can happen. Someone else might have it as being driving forward and this and that. So that's the second one. The third is a safe space. So we hear a lot about psychological safety, but actually just creating a room that what's in the room stays in the room, doesn't get out. So when you turn up, whatever I'm going to have a conversation about today stays in this room, unless I allow you to talk about it elsewhere. That psychological safety is really powerful. So it's almost setting their brains up before they even arrive, that they know this is the one room in the world they can go into and talk about whatever they want. And then the last one is collaboration. is my observation again at that business owner CEO level is they work with people in their organizations, but to get into the point of collaboration isn't necessarily. So they get a chance to collaborate because it's the loneliest job in the world.
It really
being
is.
a CEO and having a room that of people you're not paying to do a job or not paying you to tell you what you want to hear. Sounds terrible, but it can happen. To be in a room that we are in equals, that everyone's on the same place, and how do I collaborate? So we would see some of the members come together on a particular challenge, say, I'm really interested in that myself, and they would focus in and do it, and they wouldn't necessarily get to do that elsewhere. So that's my 4 pillars, and they sit underneath.
I love those, and then the accountability piece as well. So you decide something, you look at options for the way forward.
So at the end of each session, we literally say, so between now and the next time I meet you, what are you going to do? How are you going to know it's working? And how do you want me to hold you accountable for the next time you come back here?
Yep.
And
you have 4 weeks.
Yeah. And they come back. And again, it's not about having nailed it, because if they come back and say, I didn't get it done, I say, well, what did you miss? I was traveling. I was in 3 different countries. I didn't assess time correctly. So rather than saying I failed, it's actually, so this is why I focus on performance. So what was going on that you didn't assess? So if you did it again, what would you do differently? All right, well, I know I'm going to be here. So maybe it needs 3 months to focus on this rather than 1 month. And that actually is a real eye-opener, and then it helps them assess in their own organisation when people under pressure commit to dates and you're going, seriously?
Yeah, manage your expectations and others.
With everything that's going on. Have you taken into consider everything that's going on?
Just said, I'll do this by next week, no problem.
Absolutely, because you're paying me, and if you don't, I might get fired. And that pressure can build, and pressure is the biggest challenge to performing at a high level. And you can see that from sport, and you can see that in business, is as the pressure builds. So we know from the penalty taking, Southgate, there's numerous, even when it comes to Olympians on performance day, can feel the pressure building.
Absolutely. The nerves kick in.
It's no different in business. And the pressure to make decisions or commit to a particular date or have something happen by a particular date, that pressure can change your decision making.
And that stress is serious as well, and
Absolutely.
can lead to burnout.
3 o'clock, I regularly coach people about waking up at 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning, 3:48, 3:59.
Oh, I've seen that, yep.
And they're going, the interesting fact about that is the professor saying the chimp paradox is acknowledge it, make a note somewhere, allows you to go back.
Write it down. Because
you calm the chimp. The chimp's not shouting at you anymore. So, well, actually, he's taking it into consideration.
And it always seems way worse at 3 a.m. than it does at 8.
Absolutely. And it's a huge challenge. And, we work a lot as well in the group on not just mental, but emotional and also physical health. So even if it's just walking, doing a 5K walk or getting out, you don't have to run marathons. You don't have to jump off tall buildings. And
sharpening the soul, keeping yourself alert, fit, healthy.
Absolutely. And walking's enough.
Absolutely. I hear that more and more.
Yeah. There's an interesting fact about walking which I'll share with you, which is the motion of walking and walking through things. Americans call it timeline therapy. Actually allows you to resolve the challenges that you're facing. So actually, people pacing up and down is a really good thing. Because they're walking through their challenges. They're walking through whatever's going on in their head. So if you have a particular thing you want to solve, and I would coach people through walking, and you almost don't have to say anything. They're talking it out as they're walking.
So you go on coaching walking sessions?
Yeah, that physical motion. Brilliant. Even better on the beach, which is close to your heart.
Yes, you'll have to come and see me up in Portrush, Alan, and we can have a coaching session.
Go from east all the way to White Rocks and back.
Do it many times, and I absolutely love it. And I'm a bit like you. I love the podcasts. You can listen to the public eye, but others are available. How big a challenge is communication and good communication?
For you or for me?
For the people who come to the Alchemist Forum, I'm wondering, an awful lot of issues and problems can centre around the way a message is being communicated or not communicated, or assumptions being made.
Yeah. We do a lot on that in terms of when they go away, how are they going to communicate it, what are they going to communicate. And again, that's building it in Lego gives that visual. Most of the CEOs have a representation of what they're trying to achieve on their desk, built in Lego. It keeps them focused. It means they can talk about it, they can tell stories around it. So the storytelling is a big part of communication. What we also, I guess, subliminally work on is listening skills. Are they listening to their organisation? Not just physically and not just what people are saying, but what else is going on in the organisation. So it's, I think someone branded called active listening, but it's everything else that's going on. Are you listening to your organisation? Are you listening to the tensions? Are you listening to the opportunities that are out there? And often they'll come and have a conversation. Oh gosh, he said that to me. I didn't listen. So the active time out is a lot of that processing of things that may be going on, and the room is catering for that. So communication is something. The biggest part of communication is listening.
Can I go back to the model, the Lego model
certainly.
in front of you before we wind up our wonderful conversation today? You've obviously created a beautiful little piece of work here. I'm imagining it's some kind of ship, or a car or something. There's lots of figures. Now, for the people who are listening and not looking, we'd have to even lift that up to the camera. Lift it up to the camera. Sure. There we go. Hello. Right, talk us through.
So we do a lot of work on the identity of you, not just yours, but the identity of the organisation. So the identity of the Alchemist Forum. We have members who turn up and they've got opportunities, they've got carrying monkeys on their back, they are wanting to do things, they're maybe scared of a few things, they're digging themselves into a hole.
There's a ghost there, yeah.
There's a ghost, there's things happening. And typically if you're driving the organisation, that's going to happen constantly. So that's why we meet monthly, because it's about real-time solutions. They come into our Alchemist Forum, and the little red bricks are the heart of the organisation, the other members. They're at the core. I'm a guest in the Alchemist, and I chose the Mandalorian just because I love the Mandalorian. But actually, this is the way, coming into the room and working on their challenges. They pop out the other side, have resolved it, they can see their way forward, hence the clarity in that. They're carrying their saber, we're going to go in this direction. Monkeys are off their back, but they've got a toolkit on their back. They're wearing a bit of a helmet because there's still things they've got to go and face. But actually, it's the journey from challenge to solution and opportunity. And so when I sit down with people and say, well, who's the Alchemist for? This is our identity, this is who we are. And it keeps me focused to make sure that that's what we're doing. And we ask our CEOs and business leaders to build those. Did a retreat for a similar group in England recently, and I got a phone call yesterday morning saying, it's on my desk. Can you come over and do it with the rest of the organisation? And now I'm ready. It's taken a little bit of time to process what he wants to do and get his ideas, and he's obviously in another peer group, and he's now ready to move everything to the next station, whereas probably typically before he would have just rushed in and caused some challenges. So that's why.
Who knew that getting down, taking time and creating something out of Lego could give you this vision and this positive?
And did you notice your level of listening when I talked my way through that?
Oh, I didn't make a noise, did I?
That's about being in the zone.
I was in the flow and the zone.
And again, we find if someone's talking with that sort of visualization in front of them, everyone else is glued and listening to it. And when you do that with teams, it enhances the listening in teams. Like, I didn't realise that's actually what you meant. Because what you interpreted that to be is often that misinterpretation. And I guess that's where we get down to the clarity.
You're so right. Final question.
Certainly.
And we're going back to you as a leader and your business. But the purpose of this podcast, and I ask the same question to everyone, is to inspire existing business owners and ambitious entrepreneurs to grow their business by offering an insight into the success of businesses such as the Alchemists Forum. But what advice would you give to people who may have a business idea but have no idea where to begin, Alan, or are unsure as to whether the risk is worth taking?
You can put JFDI and you can put your own version of F in there. What else are you going to do with your life? You might as well just get on with it and do it. It'll either win or lose. It'll either succeed or it'll crash. Fail early and get on to the next one. you learn more from the failure than you will from the success, believe it or not. So actually, I've had a number of failures in my history. I've learned so much. It allows you to sit back and think, where did I go wrong? What did I do wrong? Get feedback from others. Maybe the timing wasn't right. You know, Edison, 3,999 times, and then the 4,000 times he got it and hit it. If you look back through history, again, that's probably why we're alchemists. Expect it to fail as many times, if not more, than you're going to be successful. But not trying, that's regret when you get to the end. I wish I'd done that.
Totally. Thank you so much to Alan Branagh, founder of the Alchemist Forum. Alan, it's been a pleasure having you in the studio. Thank you so much for tuning in and listening. And do join me again next time for another fantastic episode of the Public Eye Podcast.
Thank you.
This podcast was recorded in Granite Podcast Studio. Interested in starting up your own podcast but don't know how? Granite Podcast Studio can help. Record your podcast in our state-of-the-art studio, which is based in the heart of Newry City. Our studio has cutting-edge and user-friendly technology and can seat up to 4 people. We also provide an editing service for our team, using your guidance and editing notes to provide you with a flawless finished product, leaving your listeners wanting more. For more information on how you can get started, visit www.granitepodcaststudio.com.